Every few months, without fail, some alarming headline crashes into our social media feeds like a wrecking ball. Stop contributing to your 401k immediately, or the government is controlling your retirement savings, or my personal favorite, the 401k is the biggest financial scam in American history. And every single time I watch people panic. I watch them second-guess decades of disciplined saving. I watch them make emotional, fear-driven decisions about something that genuinely matters: their financial future, their dignity in retirement, their ability to one day stop trading hours for dollars. And honestly, most of what those headlines are selling is pure, unfiltered nonsense. But here's where I want to stop and be completely honest with you, because I think you deserve that. Within all that noise, buried underneath the clickbait and the catastrophizing, there are real, legitimate, mathematically sound reasons why some people, maybe even you, should reconsider how much they're funneling into a traditional 401k. Not because of fear, not because of some viral 60-second video with dramatic background music, but because of math, strategy, and a deeply personal understanding of where you are right now and where you want to be. The question you should never be asking is the 401k a scam? That's the wrong question entirely, and it leads you nowhere productive. The question you should be asking, the one that actually changes lives when answered thoughtfully, is this: given my current tax bracket, my future tax bracket, my savings rate, and my overall retirement strategy, where should my next dollar go? Sometimes the answer is your traditional 401k. Sometimes it's a Roth. Sometimes it's a brokerage account. Sometimes, and I know this feels uncomfortable, it's paying down debt. But the key, the thing that separates people who build real wealth from people who just hope for the best, is intentionality. Every dollar you earn deserves a deliberate destination. Let's settle this first. The 401k is not your enemy. Before we go any further, I want to say something clearly and without hesitation. The 401k is one of the most powerful wealth-building tools available to everyday Americans. Full stop. No asterisk, no fine print. Fidelity, which manages over 45 million retirement accounts and has its finger on the pulse of American retirement savings like no other institution, reports that more Americans have become millionaires through their employer-sponsored 401k plans than through any other account type. They currently report over 400,000 401k millionaires, and that number has grown consistently for more than a decade, through recessions, through market crashes, through global pandemics. For millions of Americans, the 401k isn't just one piece of their retirement puzzle. It is their retirement plan. So no, we are not here to tear it down. We are here to understand it more deeply than most people ever bother to. Because even the most extraordinary tool in the world becomes the wrong tool when it's used at the wrong time, for the wrong purpose, or without a clear understanding of what it's actually doing to your long-term financial picture. The hidden danger of being too good at saving. This one catches people completely off guard, and I understand why. We spend our entire working lives being told to save more, contribute more, max it out, don't leave money on the table. And that advice is well-intentioned. But here's the uncomfortable truth that Morningstar and Vanguard have both highlighted in their research. High savers, the disciplined ones, the consistent ones, the people who did everything right, often face higher taxes in retirement than they did during their working years. Let that sit for a moment, because it runs completely counter to everything we've been told. Here's how it happens. When every dollar you've saved over a 30 or 40-year career sits inside tax-deferred accounts, you've essentially built a growing tax liability disguised as a retirement nest egg. Then, when you turn 73, soon to be 75, the government steps in with required minimum distributions, or RMDs, and says, time to pay the piper. And you don't get to decide how much to withdraw. The IRS calculates it for you based on your account balance and your life expectancy, and you take it whether you need it or not. For people with $1 to $3 million in tax-deferred accounts, Morningstar's analysis shows repeatedly that those RMDs can push them into higher tax brackets than they ever occupied during their working years. And the situation compounds almost cruelly because your account doesn't stop growing just because you've started taking withdrawals. Vanguard's modeling shows that many large traditional IRAs continue compounding faster than RMDs pull money out, which means your distributions rise every year, your tax bill rises every year, and your tax bracket in retirement climbs right alongside them. And there's more. A portion of your Social Security becomes taxable. Medicare IRMA surcharges, those income-related premium adjustments that nobody warns you about until you get the bill, start kicking in. Capital gains interact with your ordinary income in ways that quietly push your effective tax rate higher than what's printed on any tax table. Retirement for the disciplined high saver can become a tax minefield if the strategy wasn't thought through carefully. This isn't fear-mongering, this is mathematics. And if your projections suggest that your future RMDs alone might push you into a higher bracket than you're sitting in today, it might be time to stop reflexively contributing every available dollar to your traditional 401k and start thinking about building tax diversification instead. Your future self might be in a higher bracket than you think. This scenario shows up most powerfully for people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, and it's one of the most common planning mistakes I see. You're early in your career, you're in a relatively low tax bracket, maybe the 12% or 22%, and you're contributing to a traditional 401k because that's what you're supposed to do, right? You're getting the deduction today, deferring the taxes until later. But here's what the National Bureau of Economic Research found when they modeled lifetime tax outcomes across different contribution strategies. For workers whose incomes grow even just 1 to 3% per year, which describes the majority of college-educated workers, Roth contributions tend to generate higher lifetime after-tax wealth than traditional contributions. The logic is beautifully simple. You pay taxes when you're in a lower bracket, and then your money grows completely tax-free, never to be touched by the IRS again. Think about what that looks like in real life. You start your career earning $60,000. You're probably in the 12% or 22% bracket. With modest income growth of 2% per year, 15 or 20 years later, you might be earning $140,000 or more, now sitting firmly in the 24% bracket, maybe higher if promotions, bonuses, or career pivots came along. If you contributed to a traditional 401k in those early years, you got a tax break at 12% or 22%. But when those dollars come out in retirement, potentially forced out by RMDs, you could easily be paying 24%, 32%, or more on every single one of them. The TIAA Institute has found similarly compelling evidence that workers in the bottom 3 tax brackets early in their careers are far more likely to benefit from Roth contributions as their incomes rise over time. And importantly, this doesn't mean stopping your retirement savings. It means redirecting those dollars to a Roth 401k instead, where the tax math actually works in your favor over the long run. Sometimes life needs your money more than your retirement account does. This is the part that doesn't make dramatic YouTube videos, but it might be the most important thing I say today. There is nothing heroic about maxing out your 401k every year while carrying high-interest credit card debt, while living without an emergency fund, while unable to weather a single financial shock without going deeper into a hole. I've seen it happen. People who are religiously contributing 15 or 20% of their income to retirement savings, feeling financially virtuous, and then their car breaks down, or they lose a client, or a medical bill arrives unexpectedly, and suddenly they're reaching for a credit card charging 22% interest, undoing years of compounding with one bad month. Here's a framework that I think actually reflects real human life rather than a theoretical spreadsheet. Always, always, always get your employer match first. If your employer matches your contributions up to a certain percentage, that's either a 50% or 100% automatic return on your investment before the market does a single thing. That is an opportunity so extraordinary, it almost defies description. Never walk away from it. But after that match, your next dollar might genuinely need to go somewhere else. Maybe it goes toward building a real emergency fund, not the theoretical 3 months of expenses you've been meaning to save, but the actual 3 to 6 months of expenses sitting in a high-yield savings account where you can reach it without penalty or anxiety. Maybe it goes toward eliminating high-interest debt that's actively destroying your net worth every single day. Maybe it goes into a health savings account if you have access to one, which offers arguably the most favorable tax treatment of any account available to American savers. Maybe it starts building a taxable brokerage account that you can access at any time for any reason without triggering penalties. This isn't about abandoning your retirement. It's about recognizing that financial stability isn't just a nice bonus. It's the foundation upon which everything else is built. A plan that leaves you financially fragile in the present is not a good plan, regardless of how beautiful the retirement projections look on paper. If early retirement is the dream, your strategy has to match. Here's something that doesn't get nearly enough attention in mainstream financial conversations. If you plan to retire in your 40s or early 50s, to step away from traditional employment long before age 59 and a half, then a strategy that concentrates all of your savings in accounts you cannot access without penalty for another decade or two isn't a retirement strategy. It's a cage. The traditional 401k is a remarkable vehicle for traditional retirement. But if your vision of retirement looks different, if you're chasing time and freedom before the conventional age, then you need accounts that honor that vision. Specifically, you need a taxable brokerage account funded with enough assets to carry you from the day you step away from work until the day you can access your retirement accounts without penalty. Yes, brokerage accounts carry more tax drag. Yes, dividends and interest are taxed annually. But if you invest in low-cost, low-turnover index funds, or ETFs, you can minimize that drag dramatically. And once you've held those investments for more than a year, your gains are taxed at long-term capital gains rates, often 0, 15, or 20% depending on your income, not as ordinary income. Only the growth is taxed. Your original contributions come back to you completely tax-free because you already paid tax on them when you earned them. Building a brokerage account for an early retirement isn't a compromise or a workaround. It's a deliberate, intelligent planning choice that gives you access to your money on your timeline, not the government's. When the plan itself is the problem. Not all 401k plans are created equal, and pretending otherwise does real financial harm to real people. Some plans are genuinely outstanding. Low fees, diverse investment options, institutional class index funds with expense ratios practically invisible to the naked eye. Others are, to put it diplomatically, not. High fees, limited investment choices, expensive actively managed funds, hidden administrative costs, and revenue-sharing arrangements that quietly redirect your money to people who had nothing to do with your success. Industry data paints a fairly clear picture. Large employer plans, those with 1,000 or more employees, average all-in fees of around 0.4% to 0.6%. That's reasonable. Medium-sized plans average 0.7% to 1%. Small plans, those under 100 employees, can run 1 to 1.75% or higher, and those are the ones where people feel the sting most acutely without always understanding why their balance isn't growing the way they expected. Here's the reality of what fees actually cost you. A 1% difference in annual fees doesn't just cost you 1% per year. Over a full career of compounding, it can reduce your final retirement balance by 20 to 30%. That's not a rounding error. That's potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, the difference between retiring comfortably and retiring with compromise. So if your plan's fees exceed what you could access in a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA with low-cost index funds, the math might genuinely favor getting your match and stopping there. When fees cross a certain threshold, every additional dollar you contribute is being quietly taxed by the plan itself, not the IRS. And that's a tax you're choosing to pay voluntarily, which is a choice you deserve to make consciously. The strategy hiding in plain sight, tax diversification. Here is where everything comes together, and honestly, this is the part I feel most passionately about sharing. The people who navigate retirement most smoothly, who pay the least in lifetime taxes, who have the most flexibility and control over their financial lives in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, they almost always have one thing in common. Their money is spread across all three tax buckets: tax-deferred accounts like traditional 401ks and IRAs, tax-free accounts like Roth 401ks and Roth IRAs, and taxable brokerage accounts. This isn't about having more accounts for the sake of complexity, it's about having options. In retirement, the ability to choose which dollars you draw from and when you draw them is not just convenient. It's a genuine financial superpower. It's the difference between being at the mercy of the tax code and being able to work within it strategically, filling lower tax brackets intelligently, managing your Medicare premiums, controlling how much of your Social Security gets taxed, and keeping as much of your hard-earned wealth as possible in your own pocket. If you're a high saver who knows Roth conversions are likely to be part of your future strategy, those beautiful years between retirement and RMD age, when your income might be lower and conversion opportunities are rich, then deliberately slowing the growth of your traditional balance right now by redirecting contributions to Roth or taxable accounts is not a departure from smart planning. It is smart planning. You're making life easier for your future self, giving them more room to convert at lower rates, more ability to manage taxable income, and more freedom from the forced withdrawals that can derail an otherwise beautiful retirement. Let me be completely clear about where I stand. I love the 401k. I believe in it deeply and completely. For tens of millions of Americans, it is the single greatest wealth-building vehicle they will ever have access to. And the data from Fidelity and Vanguard and Morningstar all confirm that when used consistently and wisely, it produces millionaires, real ones. But consistently and wisely is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Consistently without wisdom isn't a strategy, it's autopilot. And autopilot is how good, hardworking, well-intentioned people end up with a retirement that's more complicated, more expensive, and less flexible than it needed to be. Don't let a clickbait headline scare you away from saving. Don't let it make you distrust a tool that has genuinely transformed financial lives. But don't let habit and inertia make all your decisions for you either. Sit down, look honestly at your current bracket and your likely future bracket. Examine the fees in your plan. Think about your timeline, your liquidity needs, your early retirement dreams if you have them, your RMD exposure if you're a high saver, and then ask the question that actually matters. Where should my next dollar go? When you ask that question and truly mean it and genuinely investigate the answer, you stop reacting and start building. You stop following a script someone else wrote and start writing your own. And that, more than any single account type, any particular investment, any contribution rate, is what real financial planning looks like. Your retirement is worth that level of care. You are worth it.